me start. I guess that if I ask to this audience in particular, if you care about the companies or governments that pollute the environment, you would say the answer would be yes, right? At least out of respect for the minister here, right? So people care about the environment, and they are taking actions. Investors are taking actions in their portfolios, through initiatives like ESG, green bonds. So there's a whole range of financial products and procedures that by which investors can punish governments and companies that damage the environment and benefit projects and companies that benefit the environment. But if I ask a question to you now, whether you care about democracy, and my guess is that the answer would also be yes, that we all care about democracy, human rights, property rights, but the fact is we are not doing anything in our portfolios. Investors are not taking care about this in our portfolios, and this is what I would like to talk about. If you see, and this is also a problem. I mean, pollution and the global warming are real problems, and the decline of democracy standards is also a problem. If you see the chart on the right, unfortunately, it doesn't incorporate the latest Economist Intelligence Unit report, but let me tell you, it goes down, right? So it's an average of the Economist Intelligence Unit, the democracy index. By now, according to the index, 96 out of 167 countries are hybrid democracy regimes or authoritarian regimes, and almost 55% of the world population lives in autocratic regimes. So this is a real problem, and it's a problem that is getting aggravated, particularly in emerging market countries. We have seen the democratic recession in Turkey and Russia, China going more autocratic. And this, as we have learned in a bad way, it has implications beyond these countries' borders, right? We have seen what happened to Ukraine. We have seen how China is increasing its clout in emerging markets. And the fact is that as this happened, investors were pouring even more money into emerging market countries, and which include a lot of autocratic countries. The chart that you see here are flows from IMF. You should concentrate on the red part on the chart on the left. Flows to emerging market countries went up as democracy was receding in emerging market countries. So the question is, why do we do this? And through my research, what I found out is that most of this investing takes place almost unwittingly. What happens is that pension funds around the world hire companies like, Morgan Stanley Investment Management, JP Morgan Investment Management, several companies that are experts on emerging market countries, and these companies track indices. And these indices have a lot of countries. For instance, look at this. This is the most well-tracked sovereign emerging markets government bond index, the JP Morgan's MB. It includes 30 countries that are hybrid regimes or authoritarian regimes according to the EU. So 30 out of 67 countries, including the index, have somewhat authoritarian. So that means that if you're an investor that are tracking one of those indices, because that's what the benchmark by which your investors, the pension funds, the owners of the money, will value you, well, you end up investing in these authoritarian regimes. Look, the impact that the inclusion of China in this index, the World Government Bond Index, this is the most widely tracked government bond index in the bond market, in the government bond market. This is the biggest one. In 2021, China was included in the index. That meant that, again, as China was increasing its clout, spreading its authoritarian model throughout the emerging market world, and particularly in the most underdeveloped parts of the world in Africa, investors are pouring $120 billion into Chinese government bonds, right? The same happens in the equity world, by the way. And as it happens, ESG, that again allows investors to punish companies that attack the environment or attack diversity in the boards, that undermine different values that investors have, ESG doesn't take into account democracy. For instance, see what happened. By the time Russia invaded Ukraine, the ESG corrected MB index, I show you the JP Morgan MB index. There is an ESG version of that. The ESG version had Russia in that index had a bigger share than in the non-ESG corrected. So if you were an investor caring for the environment, right, and so you track the ESG corrected version of the JP Morgan index, you would have had more bonds of Russia compared to the non-ESG corrected. So what I'm calling is basically to bring awareness that democracy is in recession. That is an important value as well, in as much as the environment and global warming are important, considerations, and that some things should be done, not only for their own good, because they're good, because at the end of the day, they're more profitable as well. Countries that are more democratic grow faster. In this research by Nobel Prize winners, Acemoglu and Robinson, among others, show that countries that get democratic grow 20% over countries that are non-democratic, right? And this includes official GDP figures, and it is a well-known fact now that autocracies overstate GDP growth. And it's also more profitable. Look at this research. This is investing in companies in democratic countries ends up being more profitable. Why is that? Because in democracies, not only human rights are protected, but also property rights are protected. So it's these guys basically construct a portfolio and they invest in more democratic countries, the dark blue line and the dark line, and then in less democratic countries, you see that the returns are substantially higher in more democratic countries. So my idea is stop investing in highly autocratic countries at least, but my first objective is to raise awareness. I mean, I think there's no awareness that we, probably through our pension funds in the Western world, through our, in the case of the US and other countries and university endowments, we are supporting autocracies and we may not even know about it. So with that, we can take action to correct that. Thank you.